Hey, what is up everybody? UG here, and today I'm going to be kind of going over a comp overview for Ret Warrior Resto Shaman. This is my first time doing something kind of like this, so yeah, I'm pretty much just going to be going over the strats against certain healers, since the main idea of the comp is to train healers as much as possible. I can't really go over the strategy for every single comp that you could go against, since that would take way too long, and I really haven't gone against a lot of them with it this season. So I'm just gonna go over all the priests one at a time and tell you kind of my ideas or strats against them, against most teams that have them. So I guess I'm gonna start off with priests. I'm gonna kind of put holy priest and dis priest together, since you kind of play against them the same way. They're pretty much the easiest healer for you to go against. You can generally just train them pretty easily, since they really don't have that much mobility. Most of the time when you're playing against them as Ret, you're going to be wanting to run your slow spec just to make sure that they have no chances of getting away, and it's really nice just have a constant slow up at most times. Your healer is going to want to try to purge as much as possible against them, both of them. Dis shields are really good to purge off, and holy priests have renewal, and I think, do they also have shields? I actually don't know if they have too many shields. I'm really stupid. But also they have things like Holy Ward. You don't really need to sit on them the entire game, but you kind of can, so there's no point in not doing that. But just trying to connect on them as much as possible, and then I personally like to try to stun them low-ish, but that's not really necessary. You can generally get a ton of damage in and get kills a lot of the time, even if you stun them at full health. For wings against dis priests, I usually don't like to use wings until after you force like trinket and PS, just use it as like a finisher, just to make sure that they don't die, make sure that they do die. I don't know if that's 100% the best strategy, but I don't know, against teams that don't have Trinket and they're playing like Relentless or something, I 100% of the time like to save wings until second Hodge, because usually with Warrior Burst alone you end up forcing PS. But if you're kind of struggling to force cooldowns without wings, you can just blow it on any of your stuns, be it the first one or whatever. What else? Against Holy Priests, try to have your warrior save their Sharpen for when they use Ray of Hope. It pretty much mitigates the increased healing that they get from it, and also it's really helpful to make it go negative, since they can die from that, or just not topping them. Making it not top them is huge. What else? Against Holy Priest teams, the only struggle kind of is Holy Ward and I guess Fade. Just try to have your healer purge off Holy Ward as much as possible, but if they can't really purge it off at times, you can use your Warrior Stormbolt to get it off, or a lot of the times against teams you can end up getting your stun off like just as it expires, since they're usually not 100% on top of replaying it instantly, or a lot of the times they try to use it as like a death. But that's I mean, actually there's a couple more things. When you're having your goes and stunning the healer with your Stormbolt, either you want to use it off, or if they have a class that has a lot of CC, like a Rogue, Mage, Boomy, Windwalker, etc., you may want to have your warrior use that as cross CC or Fears, or have your Shaman try to get hexes on it. Just whatever you can to make sure you get out as much damage as possible on the priests. But that's about it for priest teams. Next up, I guess I'll go over Resto Shamans. So Rshams are a bit hard at times, and as you probably can tell at this point in the season, they're kind of everywhere since Rshams are super strong right now. So at like before the patch, recent recent hotfixes, you could definitely kill Resto Shamans by just training them through, even with Earth Shield on them the entire game. But that's not always the best strat against them. Actually, well, sometimes it is. You just want to make sure, when you're just going for like that, you're going to want to make sure to save your stuns for when they don't have Earthen Shield up, or try to catch them out of Spirit Wolf form, since I think they get a passive heal while in Spirit Wolf form. I'm not. They have some. It's either that or some damage reduction thing. I'm not 100% sure what it is. But if you're having trouble connecting to them, you don't have to train them all game. Just swap off, hit a DPS. Maybe you can even force them to swap Earth Shield to that target. Then you can swap back to the Resto Shaman whenever, or in a stun, hit on them without Earth Shield up. It was pretty huge. If you're planning on just training the Resto Shaman all game, you're going to probably want to play your slow spec, since they end up going faster than you with Ghost Wolf form, and it's helpful. Also, your warrior doesn't want to spend all of his globals on hamstring, and your slow would be built into your damage rotation. Yeah, I think that. I don't know. Just if you're having trouble just straight up killing them, even if you're hitting them, swap off. Try to get him to swap Earth Shield. If he doesn't swap the Earth Shield, you can just commit to whatever DPS you're hitting. But you can usually kill Resto Shamans pretty easily if they do not have Earth Shield. Orc Relentless can be kind of hard since it reduces your stuns by a lot, but you can usually push through it. Just make sure not to. I kind of not train through Earthen Shield, but sometimes you have to. If you're in Earthen Shield and there's more than one person, like 2+ in it, I personally like to AoE while inside of it, trying to make Earthen Shield expire as fast as possible. I think that's how it works. Then I guess Counter-Strike, obvious things, don't burst when Counter-Strike's up, except if you have your wall up and no one's really hitting you, and you kind of want to use Counter-Strike to pop your wall, so you get that extra little burst damage. But other than that, that's about it. Just, you don't really have to worry about killing most totems, I don't think. The only big ones are Counter-Strike, Grounding, and Sky Fury. Next up, I'm gonna be going over Mistweavers. I'd say the Mistweavers are probably the hardest teams for you to beat, since they have so much mobility and they can run Crane to get out of all your stuns. But when you do get them in a stun, they end up taking quite a bit of damage and die pretty easily. So for the most part, against Mistweaver teams, you're not gonna really want to chase them down. I guess you can kind of hit them in the opener with your initial stun, since you're all mounted and everything, and can get there pretty easily. But most of the time, you're gonna want to pull back and try to make the Mistweaver push forward, so you can swap on them on stuns whenever. One thing that's kind of annoying is Crane, since they can get out of your stuns. How long is it? Every 45 seconds or something, I think, and then it lasts for 15 seconds. So they have 30 seconds. So it's up for like a third of the game, I think. I think that's right. I don't care. But I think the thing with Crane is, you can kind of damage through it now. It feels like a Rep Paladin alone at times can out damage Crane. The Crane healing single target for them. It's more of an AoE thing in my opinion. But if both you and your warrior hit the Mistweaver through Crane, you can get pretty good pressure. And then on the right when it expires, if they're still pushed in at that time, you can stun off and usually kill through. So I guess Crane's not the biggest thing. Just the only problem with Misriver is do not just try to commit them and chase them down all game. It's just going to let their DPS do whatever they want, and you're not going to usually kill that way. But if the Misriver is kind of out in the open and really close to you, you can hit them if you can. If you can get them kind of low and then your other DPS connects on a stun, you can kill pretty easily. And also you can force them to waste like one of the rolls or maybe port or something like that, which will make it so that on your go you'll be able to have a lot more pressure. But just don't chase them down after they use something like port. It gets them way too far away for a Rep Paladin to keep up. Even Warrior has quite a bit of trouble keeping up with them. But that's about it for Mistweavers. There's not really too much to go over for most healers. It's just kind of obvious things. But yeah, next up I'm going to be going over H-Pally. So Warrior does pretty good against your Holy Pallies. The only problem is it's kind of tough to train them at times since they pretty much have double your mobility with double freedom and double horse. But a big thing against H-Pally is just saving your Hodge. You can end up hitting them whenever, like you can hit them all game pretty easily. But they're going to try to run away with either freedom or horse. But what you're supposed to do is whenever they use either of those things and try to get a bit of distance from you, just use your stun then. It completely mitigates their mobility and makes you and keeps up your pressure. A lot of times if you go like that, you can end up forcing bubble and bobs really easily. But another big thing is H-Pally is since they have way more mobility than you, like Misrivers, don't just chase them down. Just swap off, hit the DPS for a bit. Because if you can force something like Bop or Sack onto the DPS, it's going to help you a lot more than just training them down and barely hitting them. I think that's about it. I mean, I guess wall, just be wary of wall. I think it's a 20% damage reduction in this expansion. I'm not 100% sure, but 20% is pretty big. You can usually still force cooldowns through wall if you use something like wings or if your warrior's bursting. Like a lot of the times against H-Pally teams, I like to just press wings right off the bat. Just get as much pressure out as possible. But that's about it for H-Pally teams. If for any chance that they are using melee wings, this also works for Misrivers using Crane. If you're running eye for an eye, use it. It does quite a bit of damage to them and just kind of counteracts some of the healing that they're doing with it. Yeah, that's about it for H-Pallies. There's really not too much to go over for them. And then I guess last up are Resto Druids. Resto Druids are kind of hard to talk about because I haven't really played much since the recent hotfixes came out. And I haven't really queued into too many of them this season. So I kind of got to base it off how it was last season. And we did pretty good against Resto Druids last season. You can actually kill them quite easily with just the combination of Warrior MS and Shaman Purge. Shaman Purge is insane against Resto Druids when Resto Shamans are using Electrocute. If you don't know what Electrocute does, I think it puts a dot on the target that you purge whenever you purge something from them, which it's just helpful because it's just extra damage that you use on them. The big things against Resto Druids is trying to not use your stuns when they're in bear form. That's pretty big, and that ends up mitigating a lot of your damage. It's kind of obvious. Bear form, it's bear form. It's always been bear form. Another thing is don't completely commit to training them. Resto Druids are actually one of the things where you can train them as long as they don't have something like dash up. Especially if they end up wasting their displacer, you switch to them instantly and just start training them as much as possible. since they really have no other way to get away from you. A lot of the times what I like to do is the same thing as with H-Pallies. I like to save my Hajj for when they displace and then connect to them after that. It kind of gets rid of their only really big mobility that they have, apart from dash, but dash is a 3-minute cooldown, I think. Something like that. It used to be a 3-minute cooldown. What else is there? Be wary of Bark Skin and Iron Bark. Most of the time, like, they can only Iron Bark outside of stuns, but they can Bark Skin while in a stun. So don't commit too much if they're gonna just Bark Skin it, but sometimes you may have to commit a lot to force Bark Skin, since you're not probably gonna kill without forcing Bark Skin. But if you can ever force both Bark Skin and Iron Bark, it's huge, makes your next stun setup amazing, since they won't have anything out even after the stun. What else is there against Resto Druids? One strat that you can do is, if the Resto Druid actually does get away, but one of you can still connect, just have that person keep connecting while the other person is hitting the DPS. Eventually, try hit whatever DPS doesn't have either a lot of self-healing or just doesn't have any hots on them already. This will make the Resto Druid forced to come out eventually to heal them, and then when they do push out, you can catch them in a stun and converge on them and do big pwn. Another thing is Thorns. Thorns, I think it makes it so physical damage is reduced by like 25% when you hit into it, and also it does a ton of damage to you. So it's good to not really hit them through Thorns, obviously. Sometimes just wait for your healer to purge Thorns and something like that. That's kind of it for Resto Druids. I kind of lost this at the end now. I probably missed a lot of things that I should have talked about, but whatever. If you have any questions or anything that you think I missed, just ask me in the comments. I'll be sure to respond to them as quick as possible. I hope you guys enjoyed and this was helpful. Peace.